Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here and joining us as I introduce you to Jonathan Pembroke. He's a grand friend of mine, a wonderful writer. I mean, incredible, really draws you in and doesn't let you loose. And we have something else in common. We were both in the Air Force, several years apart,
A few.
just a few, because he's old enough to be my son. But I want to I've never asked him this question. How did you get into writing and how did you get into fantasy? My fantasy.
Well, those questions are kind of related actually, because I think that the genesis of writing was born of my love for fantasy and not the other way around. And I can tell you exactly what it was. I remember when I was about 7, 8 years old, and my father used to read bedtime stories to me, and he would read some that involved dragons and things like that. And I remember at one point he had read me part of The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien's
Oh,
original, and I was sucked in. Not too long after that, he kind of got tired of reading the same thing, and he says, "Well, do you want to read it yourself?" And I said, "Yes." And he gave me the book, and I finished. I read it and just devoured it, actually. Well, like I said, I was 8, maybe 9, somewhere in that vicinity. And for folks who haven't read that of Tolkien's work, it's a it's very I would say it's very age appropriate for somebody at that level if they can absorb it, if they can read it, because it's not very graphic and there's no swearing or anything. In fact, I like to kind of use that as a barometer when I'm talking to people because it is one of the seminal fantasy works that is really age appropriate for all ages. Not too long after that, I went with Dad to see a really bad fantasy movie called Dragon Slayer. It was a Disney movie. I want to say about 1980, and I mean it was featured almost nobody, no names that anybody would ever remember or recognize, with bad computer effects and everything. I didn't care. I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. The wizards, the fighting, and the monster. Of course, the dragon was really cool. And I still to this day, this is 1980, and occasionally in those days when you go to the theater, you might get a little prize with it. With every ticket, they gave a little triangular diamond shaped sticker that said dragons are real, and
oh, cool.
I still have that sticker somewhere. 40 years later, and that was it. I was just drawn in. So I've always liked fantasy ever since I was a kid, and the more I read of it, the more I thought, hey, I can do this. I can tell stories too. I started when I was in college, so the early 90s, University of Nebraska grad. Um, and I kind of off and on did it. I never really applied myself. And then I want to say it was about 2005, and you mentioned I was in the military. I had come back from a deployment in Afghanistan and gotten back. And after I'd gotten settled back in, my wife had kind of told me that, I needed to use some time while I was over there. While I was downtime, she said, "You're not going to be doing anything." And we really couldn't. We were, when you were off duty, you just kind of sat around. She said you need to spend some time writing if you want to do that. And I came back and I hadn't done squat. She said, "Okay, you really need to sit down. And if you want to do this, if you want to make something of yourself, you need to dedicate some time to it." And we kind of worked out an arrangement where for a couple nights a week, I would spend several hours doing that and just sitting there and writing and just doing that. And it has morphed and that was in 2005, so 20 years ago, and I'm still writing. I wrote a lot of short stories back in the day, and then I started writing novels about 10 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. So I have to say, on one hand, I've always loved it and enjoyed doing it, but as to how the push came to really get over the hump, I have to credit my wife for giving me that push.
Yay, Ra, you had a strong woman behind you.
She's still behind me, and she still supports everything I do with my writing career. So that's been I've been really blessed that way.
Yeah, I know she does the beautiful bookmarks for you,
Yes, she
bookmarkers.
does. She is
And
absolutely the artiste in the family.
hmm I was wondering, were you ever involved in Dungeons and Dragons or Anything on that order?
Way back, yes, about the same time the same time frame, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I kind of started reading some of that stuff, and through my teenage years, I played a little bit, but I never really got into an organized game, mostly because with my father being in the military, we moved a lot. My friend group was shifting a lot. I went to three different high schools growing up because
Mm,
of him moving and careers. So, about the time I would establish my friends, I would be moving again, and I never really got the opportunity. Just it never seemed to happen. My interest diversified a little bit. My love of writing remained, but my interest in Dungeons and Dragons tailed off a little bit about the time I hit college. So that's why I never did. But yeah, I read a lot of I had some of the original hardback rule books back when I was a teenager.
hmm How many books have you published now so far?
I am up to 10 books now.
Up to
So
10. How many series?
I have realistically three series. I guess I could say four, although one book is just a standalone. The Probably my best known and my best selling series is called The Holly Sisters. This is the cover from the third one on that T-shirt. It is about two fairies they run criminal street gang, and these are not like little sweet Tinkerbell fairies. They drink and smoke and cuss and get in bar brawls and things like that. And their gang of fairies is competing with gangs of other creatures, mostly leprechauns, for the control of their city's underworld. And if people have asked me how to categorize it, I would call it, this is a mouthful, but I would call it second world urban crime fiction fantasy. So I don't know how else to describe it. I have a ongoing series called Tales of Bleakwater. It's about a middle-aged cat burglar, and that's kind of ongoing. Those are all short novels. They're all about 150 pages, whereas the Holly Sisters trilogies are about 400 each. I have a duology called The Way of the Pathfinder, the first book of which was Pilgrimage to Skara. That's the first book I ever wrote and published. And then I
Hmm.
have one book that I wrote for middle grade readers called The Lady and the Librarian. Most of my work is written for adults. I wouldn't say it's quite as gritty or graphic as, say, Game of Thrones, but it does t tip more that direction than on the clean side. And The Lady and the Librarian, like I said, was written I really wrote it for my 12-year-old granddaughter at one point, so I had to keep it pretty clean.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
10 books, and I guess since I am writing a sequel right now to Librarian, that will be my fourth series.
That's awesome. And you've done all this in 20 years
I
or less.
actually I published my first paperback was Rumble in Wood Hollow, which is the first book of the Holly Sisters in 2019.
Okay. Well, that's when I started writing.
My Pilgrimage to Skara, the book I mentioned, I had put out in 2016 just as a Kindle book, as an ebook. But yeah, then I didn't do anything until 2019. So basically, in 5.5 years, I've put out 10 books in paperback.
That that is incredible. That's a lot. Now, were any of yours traditional, or did you choose to go self-published?
I could say that I chose to go self-published because I wanted all the freedom of control, but the reality is I did try to get several of them traditionally published, and I didn't have any bites. I had sent to agents, I had sent to publishers, and I did not get a whole lot in the way of positive response. So I chose to do it myself. And kind of now at this point, if somebody wanted to try to publish me, I'd consider it, but I do enjoy the freedom. I do enjoy being able to publish what I want.
Hmm. I agree with you on that. I, when I started, I had the idea of being traditionally published, and then I saw how little control the
Hmm.
author has, and that's when I decided, no,
Well,
I didn't want to give up that control.
yeah, being trad published does have its advantages. You have built-in editorial, you have built-in promotional and marketing, and you have built-in advertising. And you just have distribution that a lot of self-publishers can't match. And as self-publisher, you do have to be your own publicist, you have to be your own editor or hire these things out, your own cover designer and all that sort of thing. But as you say, you have the control. There are a lot of books I've read by that were self-published that could never have been traditionally published, whether by the subject matter, because they tackled something controversial, they were too spicy, um, they used a racial slur, even if it wasn't meant in a racial way that would a traditional publisher would have balked at. Excuse me. I've read some very good books that have never could have never been traditionally published. So that is the you do have the freedom to really
Hmm.
publish what you want. It's your process. You have the control.
Yeah. Now, this new book that you're writing, or there, I know that you're finishing that one, but you're writing another one, are you not?
I've
Or you've
got
written it?
well, I've got a couple in the works. I've actually, like I said, I'm working on right now a sequel to The Librarian, Lady and Librarian, which I is tentatively titled Wrath of the Frozen King. It is going to be another uh, for young adults, for middle graders. I finished the first draft of my next fairy book, so it'll be a new trilogy with those characters. And then I have a new four-book series that I am would like to do, and that is it'll probably be my grimmest, darkest, most visceral series yet. And people that read the Holly Sisters said, "Wow, it's going to be worse than this." I said, "Yeah, pretty much." I'm really put the main character through the ringer in that one.
Yeah. I I can believe that because you are I'm trying to think of the word to say. It's not that you are brutal because everything has a reason and that you do it with your character. The response that the character has is within the bounds of what is set morally in the book. So there's nothing um, out of whack or crazy or anything like that. It's you keep them centered where
Well,
they need to be.
I like to, there are a lot of grimdark, which is a genre, subgenre of fantasy. It became very popular after the Game of Thrones TV show. The book line was called A Song of Fire and Ice, the series. It became very popular after George R. R. Martin's work got more popular. And there have been a lot of people that have shifted their writing into the grimdark type of uh, content. I don't necessarily like to think of mine as grimdark, grim, grim and dark, meaning a lot of bad things happen to people. And some of them are, they're really bleak. They just massacre the entire main cast. Nobody is safe. A lot of people suffer tragedy. They suffer personal loss, whether physical, mental, or otherwise. I don't necessarily like to think about that. I know the world is a brutal place,
Yes,
but
it is.
but frankly, and I do put my characters through a lot. But when you get right down to it, when you read my books, I always try to have an underlying sense of hope. And my endings are going to are often going to be kind of bittersweet. Characters will have been through a great deal, but they're always looking towards a better future, even after they've
Hmm.
kind of suffered what's happened. Um, and I can say that in the Holly Sisters, the trilogy is completed, and at the end of it, the main character has suffered a lot, but she's looking towards a brighter future. And in the Way of the Pathfinder, the characters have lost, but things are looking up. And that's kind of how I like to end my books. Not
Hmm.
necessarily, I don't like to end with everybody died, the end. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how some of the grimdark books go. And I like there to be that idea
Hope.
that all of their struggles are producing or will produce a better outcome for them in the future.
Do you think that any of the time that you've served overseas, been deployed, and that have influenced any of your writing?
Maybe a little bit when I think I've drawn some specific experiences from things that have happened, like thinking about a character maybe being under fire and certain things. Because, I mean, quite frankly, if you've I don't say this to be flippant, but if you've never actually had consciously understood that somebody is flinging bullets in your direction, you don't really know how that feels. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
if you've never had that happen, it's hard to explain it to somebody to whom it hasn't happened. And in the heat of the moment, you don't necessarily feel it, but afterwards, as it sinks in. Now, I was fortunate, being in the Air Force, like you were, and I was a meteorologist, so I wasn't exactly a frontline infantry person where I was being shot at on a routine basis. But I was in Afghanistan, and there was no front line there. Everywhere we were vulnerable, and we had mortars falling on the base and things like that. Even though it was rare, it did happen. And I've tried to use some of the adrenaline that people feel when they're in that situation for characters who are in combat and they might start shaking afterwards. Um, I would never classify myself as having PTSD, even though I've had reactions to things. Like if I hear loud noises like fireworks, I do instinctively jump and think, I need to get to cover. I just think of that as conditioning. I wouldn't call it trauma. I think that would be disrespectful to people that actually have legitimate trauma from their
Mm-hmm.
service. But I've incorporated some elements like that into the way some characters react to things that happen to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was also thinking too that when you go into a war area,
Hmm.
you'll still find people that have hope.
Yes, you do.
They've been through hell and back, but they can still have hope.
And it is remarkable when you see that too, because of some people who lean so heavily, say, on their faith for that. And it can be almost inspirational. It can almost drag you along if you're starting to feel it, and it can help elevate your spirits in those times.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that when people read my stuff, they do feel by the end that there is hope, that it wasn't all for just death and darkness, that there's some good came of it too.
I'm well, I'm so glad that your dad introduced you to Tolkien because otherwise we wouldn't have your books today.
Oh, but who knows? I might have written that romance bestseller out there. You never know how that would have happened. I might have been the next Nicholas Sparks by now.
Yeah, yeah, could be, could be.
Hard to say.
Yeah. I know that you also are in an organization called the White Mountains chapter of Arizona Professional Writers,
Hmm.
and that you are very instrumental in getting setting up and working on their second annual conference, writers conference and book festival. Why don't you tell me a little bit about last year's and what you expect this year?
Well, last year, the first year, we all did that, and you know too, because you were there, of course, and a big part of it as well. But I wasn't really sure what to expect last year. I thought, it's the first time doing it. I had no idea what we'd expect, and I was not only stunned but super happy with the way things went. There was a lot of work went into it. You and some other folks, I know some of whom you'll be interviewing, like Paul Lewinsky and oh, geez, Dave's last name escapes me all of a sudden. I can't believe
Gilmore?
that. Yeah, Gilmore. I'm sorry. David Gilmore and Scott Harrington and all these other folks who worked so hard to help make this happen. Um, it really went really well, and I'm really looking forward to this next one. So to the point that I've even tasked now to do the floor layout for this next one. So I'm gonna have to get on that this week and see what we can do and propose us a floor layout. We had, I think, 30 authors last year.
35.
35. And so we're hoping to get half as many or twice as many this year and half again as many, twice as many, and that'd be great. It's amazing. You think in this small mountain town that we live in, I Kathleen lives in the next town over, but we're all kind of in the same community. In this small mountain town, you wouldn't think we'd have that much foot traffic for a book event, and it was amazing. We had hundreds of people come through, and it was a great experience. And to anybody watching this, if you've never done something like this, I highly encourage you to get out and do it and try to set one up, even if it's small to start, um, because it's great for networking, it's great for selling books, and it's great for the community. We
Mm-hmm.
had all kinds of vendors locally who were interested. In fact, the restaurant owned by our mayor was our official food vendor last year. for folks to come and have lunch while they shopped around and picked up a book. How much more could you ask for than that? We guess we could have offered him a beer. That would have been about it. But
I think he had some.
did he? Okay.
Oh
And so
no, no, I'm please don't say
say what?
I
No, there was no beer there. No, nobody
no.
who's watching this saw there was no beer. None. None.
Uh-uh.
But anyway, you know what I mean. It was a great experience, and I
Yeah.
really think it was a lot of fun. Anybody who's watching this, who's in the local area or the next state over, I encourage you to come check it out. And I said we had hundreds of people walk through, and we're already way ahead this year of where we were at this point. I think this point last year, we were still trying to figure out what we were doing. We didn't have a venue. We didn't have any banking system set up. We had no advertising. And this year we're already well ahead of that and leaning into it. So yeah, I really we've got a great community here that is very supportive of us. If you're down in Phoenix and thinking, hey, I'd like to escape to the mountains for the weekend, come on up. We also have a writers conference the day before, and we're going to have some good speakers coming to talk to us. It's a good chance
Mhm.
again to network and just get to meet people. So anybody who's in Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, come check us out.
Actually, I was talking to some people from New Mexico the other day, and they plan on coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, from Roswell.
Okay, great.
So, and she's a prolific writer also. So, she's also a website designer, and she's doing my website, and I'm
Oh, okay.
helping her get here.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love
Yeah.
I would love our reach to expand, to people from outside the state,
Hmm.
not just because having more authors there is good for the event, but I would love people to come in and just experience the town. The Show Low
Yes,
and the White Mountains area is really just a great place during the summer to be.
it is. And I believe that there is just such energy here. I know that I have met, I would say, close to 100 authors that live up within a 50-mile radius
Yeah, and you
of
wouldn't think
Shiloh.
that. Navajo County has, I think, a total population of 125,000 people. And you would
Hmm.
think, okay, you're not going to find much in the way of art or authors, and we're swimming in them. It's amazing to
Hmm.
me how many authors, and I don't just mean authors, but I mean good writers that we've met who live up here. That
Yeah.
we have some amazing writers up here, and a lot of them are going to be at the book festival. So
Yes, they are.
we
Yes.
have USA Today best-selling authors living up here.
Hmm.
So it really is a good opportunity, and it's a great event. We're not quite as big as Tucson yet, but give us time.
Yeah, that's true. But like you said, give us time. We're babies, taking baby steps, but
Mm-hmm.
we're growing by leaps and bounds.
That's right.
So thank you. And thank you for joining me, Jonathan. You're
Oh,
such a joy to
absolutely.
talk with and to work with. Usually, ladies and gentlemen, usually when I go to events, he's there, and another mutual friend and writer, Paul Lewinsky, is there, and the three of us are kind of like the three amigos.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so if you see one of us at an event, you'll see the other ones usually.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you again, Jonathan, for joining me and sharing with me. And the next thing I want you to do is share with us how people can get hold of you, how they can contact you if they want to. And ladies and gentlemen, I will be putting it on a slide at the end also so that you can pause it and write the information down if you can't jot it down quick enough now. Jonathan.
The best way to get a hold of me is actually to email me. It's Jonathan, JONATHANS, Pembroke at Gmail. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. You can also go to my website, which, yes, Kathleen's going to scold me for this, but I'm still hosting my website through WordPress. It's wordpress.flinthatchet.com. And I have a contact me form on there that you can send it, it'll email me as well. All of my books are linked on my website as well. They're all available on Amazon for paperback and Kindle. I haven't gone wide yet. We'll see, maybe one of these days. But right now, they're just on Amazon. And I am always out and about in the local area trying to sell, trying to do events too. I know we're gonna all be at Payson at I think their eighth annual book fest this
Mm-hmm.
year in
Yep.
July, and when we have ours
No,
in
10th.
August,
10th.
10th of July. Okay,
No,
that is
10th annual.
10th
Last year it
annual.
was
Oh, it
ninth.
is. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to be down there and we're going to have our own event in August on the 9th is our book festival with the conference on the 8th. And so we're out and about. We're around. So please, if you're in the area this summer, if you're in the White Mountains, come see us.
Thank you, Jonathan. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Until next time, bye bye.
Bye bye.